Assalamu alaikum everyone. How are you guys? A-level. Yeah, this is AS level, okay? This is not ninth grade. This is AS level. Uh, Walaikum salam. So good to hear that. Okay, so are you guys done with mid-year or do you guys have mid-year exams? I'm good, alhamdulillah. No, I did not get a haircut. I mean, yes, I did get a haircut, but the reason why I did was because I went for Umrah. इस बात को भी महीने से ऊपर हो गया. Sir, please do equation of circle. I did equation of circle recently for add maths. I mean, if you guys want to watch that, you can do that. It's very relevant. How long will this stream last for? Probably an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. Let's see. Okay, what else? Thank you, I appreciate it. Although I kind of miss my old hair, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Anyway, so it's been a while since I streamed anything to do with AS, so let's start. Sir, will we get regular classes? What do you mean regular classes? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by regular classes. I have midterm starting 16th. I'm done with chapter 1. Okay, good luck is all I can say. Hello, Asma. Sir, what nothing app is that? Achha, what noting app is that? Oh, that's GoodNotes. GoodNotes. I've switched to GoodNotes from PDF Expert. Yes, this is applicable for AdMaths. In fact, my notes for AdMaths quadratic equations and AS quadratic equations are more or less the same. The only thing that's different are the example questions that I solve in between. For AdMaths, I take from AdMath past papers. For O levels, for AS, I take from AS past papers. That's the only difference. Okay. So start करें. Do you remember me? I took A-level math. Asma, the name rings a bell. The name definitely rings a bell. Okay, that's all I can say. Sir, do you remember me from grade 9? Saad, yes, I do remember you from grade 9. Nixer, yes. Okay, so let's write down today's date, 5th of December 2024. Let's start. Inshallah, from January, I'll be posting P3 also. Okay, so these are the concepts that we have to cover. And quadratic equations is a fairly easy chapter, and you will have around, I think, 6 to 8 marks of questions in P1 in the exam, which makes it quite an important topic. Okay. So completing square or sketching the quadratic curve, this is completing square is something that you guys do in O levels, but we learn a new method. Okay, so I'm going to be assuming that you guys haven't done add maths. Okay, for those of you who have done add maths, every concept is the same. And then we have discriminant applied to a curve now, and we also have quadratic inequalities. Now I might change the order a little. We might do quadratic inequalities first, very important, because quadratic inequalities is used in discriminant, whether it's applied to a curve or a straight line, okay? And then there's this guy's quadratics, which is very easy. So let's start with the very first concept, which is sketching a quadratic curve. I'm not streaming tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm taking a break. Sketching a quadratic curve. Now, what do you need if you want to sketch a quadratic curve? Let's say as far as a straight line is concerned, if you want to draw a straight line or even sketch a although we don't sketch a straight line, we draw a straight line. We want basically 2 points. Okay, we join 2 points and we have a straight line, and that's it. But as far as sketching a curve is concerned, in sketching a curve, we want 3 things. Okay, so what are the 3 things that we need? Number 1, we need Achha, before that, let's see what a quadratic curve actually looks like. Okay, before I write down the three things, let's see what a quadratic curve looks like. So here is the x-axis, here is the y-axis. So you can have a quadratic curve that looks like this, okay, or it's also possible to have a quadratic curve that looks like this. So basically a happy face or a sad face. So you can have a quadratic curve that's the opposite of it, something like this. So here's the x-axis, here's the y-axis. Now let's see what are all the important points on this curve. So all the important points on this curve, there are 3 important points, okay? Yeah, you can say 3 things that we need. So one is, can't see the sketch? What do you mean can't see the sketch? I'm not drawing the graph? Okay, can you guys see it now? I think it was, I don't know, maybe it paused, but I guess I hope it's clear now. So let's see the important points. Now, the first thing we need to know is what kind of nature is it going to be? Is it going to be a minimum graph or is it going to be a maximum graph? Okay. Meaning this graph, by the way, the first one that you're looking at is a minimum graph. Okay, and the second one that you're looking at is a maximum graph. Now, why do we call it a minimum graph and a maximum graph? We'll talk about that in a minute. Second is turning point. Turning point is perhaps the most important of them all, okay? So when I say turning points, we give the coordinates of turning points we assign them special letters, h, comma, k. Okay, and the third are your intercepts. Okay, and when I say intercepts, I mean x-intercepts, okay, and then also the y-intercept. Okay, so as you can see, both these curves have 2 x-intercepts. Here's x1, here is x2. And when the turning point that I was talking about, so the x-coordinate of the turning point is referred to as h. Okay, so this point is referred to, this x-coordinate is referred to as h. And then the y-coordinate is k. Why do you want to know where I live? Just curious, okay. And also, although I didn't show it over here, but we can always fix it. If I drag this a little to the left, you will see that this curve has a y-intercept. Okay, so let's drag this here. Let's drag this here. So you can see that this curve also has a y-intercept, okay, which is right here. Now, same goes for a maximum curve. Okay, if I drag this over here a little, so you can see that this curve has a y-intercept. Okay, this curve has an x-intercept. Here's one x-intercept. Here is another x-intercept. And then there is an x-coordinate of the turning point right here. And then there is a y-coordinate of the turning point right here. So let's write them down. Here is h and here is k. Okay. And the reason why we call them minimum and maximum curves is because this point right here, this point k, is the maximum point. Okay, it's the maximum value that this curve will ever take. That's the reason why it's called the maximum curve. And this point right here, k, is the minimum value of the curve. Okay. So next is how do we find out these things? Okay, so, and also remember that I'll put a star on x-intercept. What's this star for? This star is that a curve may not have x-intercepts. Okay, a quadratic curve may not have x-intercepts. So the most important thing is perhaps the turning point and the y-intercept. Okay, Walaikum assalam. Now let's talk about how we get these things. Okay, so once again, what do we need? We need the nature, we need the turning point, and we need the intercepts. Okay, so how do we find out the nature? How do we find out the turning point? How do we find out the intercepts? Okay, so let's talk about that in detail, starting with the nature. Okay, starting with the first thing, which is the nature. So how do we determine the nature of a quadratic curve? How do we decide whether the curve is going to be a maximum curve or a minimum curve? And by the way, before I resume, I'd really appreciate those of you who are watching if they can just like the stream. It has better reach when you do that. And also subscribe to the channel in case you haven't done that yet. Okay. So the nature means that it could be a minimum curve, okay, or it could be a maximum curve. Okay, so if you have to draw a curve, no, it's not b square minus 4ac. It's not that. We don't decide the nature by the discriminant. Okay, somebody really needs to sit down and revise. That's not how it is. So nature is decided by the coefficient of x squared. Okay, so remember the general form of a quadratic equation, it's y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so if a is greater than 0, then we have a minimum curve. Yeah, I do teach tuitions. I do. If you're asking for P1, then my P1 batch is about to end. I'm not starting a new one, but I'm starting M1, S1 classes, inshallah, from January. You can join those, okay? And if A is less than 0, then it's going to be a maximum curve, okay? Combination, I started working on combination videos. Inshallah, they will be out soon. Okay, so there's a lot of, if you guys must have noticed with permutation that there are a lot of concepts that I have separated to make it easy. Now I need to do, my team is doing the same for permutation, so they will be inshallah out very soon. Okay, so this is how we decide, the nature. Okay, yes, we can also double differentiate, but right now I'm assuming that you guys don't know differentiation. Okay, differentiation is something that we do towards the end, so I will avoid using differentiation. Now the next is turning point. How do we find out the turning point? Okay, the most important thing. Ninth, no, I don't teach grade 9 students. S1 classes, yes, I do have S1 and M1 classes starting from January. Registrations will start from December. You'll find out on my Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, everywhere. So if you're following on Instagram, that's fine, you won't miss it. If you're not, make sure that you do so you don't miss out when registrations start. Okay, I repeat, registrations inshallah will start probably from the coming Monday. Okay, Monday or Tuesday. Now, how do we find out the turning point? Here's how we find out the turning point. So we have the general form of a quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? And then what we do is we convert it to something known as completed square form, which is a x minus h, the whole thing square from k. Okay, and from this we take the turning point, which is h comma k. Okay, so this is the general form, the expanded form, or the expanded form. Okay, and then we have the completing square form. Okay, so how do you convert it to completing square form? There are two methods. What method have you guys done? For converting it to completed square form? This is exactly the same as math quadratics, okay? Only the example questions that I will be solving are different. Everything else is exactly the same. So the one method is, here's method 1. And I prefer this method in quadratics, but that doesn't mean that you neglect the other method, okay? The other method I prefer actually in equation of circle. Okay, so method 1 is comparing of coefficients. Okay, comparing of coefficients. This is the method, okay? So let's say that you have the following. Yeah, comparing coefficient, exactly. Let's say you have the following. Y is equals to x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay, and then you want to bring this in the form of y equals to a x minus h, the whole thing square plus k. Okay, if you use IGCSE method, that's fine. There's nothing to worry about. I'll do both methods, and then you guys can decide which method you want to stick to. Okay, this method is more relevant, especially when it comes to quadratics, because you'll have a lot of questions. Achha, by the way, I have uploaded a worksheet. In fact, I've uploaded 3 worksheets, which you guys can download from. There will be a link in description. If one of you can check and tell me if it's working, that would be great. So this method comes in handy because you have sort of different types of formats in which you're supposed to bring it. Okay, so that's why I prefer this method when it comes to quadratics. When it comes to equation of circles, then I prefer the IGCSE method. Okay, So comparing of coefficients. Let's do this. Let's solve this. This might seem a little lengthy, and it is a little lengthy, but eventually you get the hang of it. So on the right hand side, it's ax minus h, the whole thing square plus k. Okay, the sign that you see, this is not a typo or something. This is basically identical sign. Okay, it's an identity sign. So we expand the right hand side using the identity, the second identity. So ax square minus 2hx plus h square, close the bracket, plus k. Yes, of course, you can use differentiation also. But like I said, right now, I'm assuming that you guys don't know differentiation, because it's not just that you have to find out the turning point, you have to write it in a certain form. Okay, so that's why using this method is important. So x squared plus 6x plus 8. Now what we do is we compare coefficients. Okay, so we compare the coefficient of x squared, which on the left hand side is 1 and on the right hand side is a. So we immediately have the value of a, which is equal to 1. Okay, then we compare the coefficient of x. So on the left hand side it's minus 2ah. Notice that we have already found out the value of a, so we're going to use that in a minute. On the right hand side it's 6, so minus 2 into 1 into h equals to 6, means that if you solve for h equals to minus 3. Okay, so we have a, we have h, 2 down, 1 more to go. So let me use a different color, use the color black. So constant is whatever is left, okay, terms that have no x in them. So on the right hand side that's a(h squared plus k. On the left hand side that's 8. So notice we have already the value of a, so we replace that. Everything else, we all have the value of k, so we solve for k. So we have 9 plus k, which is equal to 8, k equals to 1. Okay, whether this is easy or difficult, I'll leave that up to you guys. Okay, but this is important, don't take it lightly. This is important. K equals to minus 1, sorry, not positive 1. So that means now this equation, which was earlier in the general form, it's lengthy, it's not difficult. Okay, it's lengthy, but it's not difficult. And you will need, let me tell you, you will need this concept, this comparing of coefficients, when it comes to quadratics very often. Okay, because when we are doing discriminant, you will need this. You will need to you need to be able to scrape off the coefficients of x squared, x, and constants. So this, when we write it in the completed square form, is 1x minus minus h. Okay, so this becomes plus h, 3 the whole thing square. Okay, and then k is minus 1. So there you go. Yes, you can use dy by dx for turning point, but like I said, our job here is not to just find out the turning point. Our job is to also write it in the completed square form. And then what we do is we compare it with ax minus h, the whole thing square plus k. So upon comparison, we can see that the turning points are h comma k. So a simple shortcut, when you have to find out the x coordinate of the turning point, just change the sign. So if it's plus 3, it's going to become minus 3, and the other way around also. And the y coordinate you take as it is. Okay, so this is, for this curve, these are the coordinates of the turning point. Okay, now let's look at method number 2. I know method number 2 you guys would say is a lot easier, and I completely agree with that. But method 1 has more applications, because sometimes the question will give you a certain form which you have to write it into, which means that you have to, it's in your best interest to use the comparing of coefficients method. Okay, so method number 2 is the one that's same as O level / IGCSE. I'll upload these notes. Okay, once we're the same link where you find the worksheets, you'll find these notes also, but inshallah after the class. Okay. Okay, that's funny. I like that. Hairline quadratic curve. So let's use the old method, which is x squared plus 6x plus 8. Now I have videos on this also. So the first step is that you write down x squared, you write down 6x, you leave a bit of space, you then write the constant. Okay. Now there's something that you need to add to complete the square. Who will decide that? The coefficient of x will decide that. The coefficient of x is 6. So you add half of the square of the coefficient of x. And also, by the way, prior to doing this method, make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. Okay, so an important note, and that is make sure coefficient of x squared is 1. Okay. So if you've added something, that means you must subtract the exact same thing, because this is not an equation. We don't have an equals to sign, so we can do both on both sides. So we need to do the opposite on the same side. So this part of the expression becomes x plus 3 the whole thing square, and then we have 8 minus 9, which is equal to what? Which is equal to minus 1. Okay, and then you already have this in completed square form, which if you use to find out the turning point, you have minus 3 minus 1. And there you go, fellas, that's the answer. Okay. So the problem with method 2 is, let's do another example where I will use method 1. The problem with method 2 is that if the coefficient of x squared is not 1, it's not that you can't use this method, it's just that it gets a little tricky. Okay, you can still use it, but it just gets a little tricky. So here is another example. Shouldn't we get all constants and x values to separate sides? It'll make it easier to process. I'm not sure I understand that. But if that's something that you have been doing, and if that's something that has been helping you, then stick to it. It's up to you. Okay. So here's example number 2. Let's see what it says. So we have y is equals to 2x squared plus 6x minus 7. Okay. Now let's bring this in completed square form. Method 2 gets a bit confusing if coefficient, yeah, that's what I said. If the coefficient of x squared is not 1, method 2 can be a little confusing. So 2x squared plus 6x minus 7, let's set this identical to what? Let's set this identical to a. Yeah, you can take 2. I never said that you can't do it. You can take 2 common, but it's just that the chances of getting the whole thing wrong will go up. Okay, the more the working you have to do, the more likely you are to make a mistake. Now, there's nothing we can do on the left-hand side. Now, with the passage of time, you will eventually have the expanded version memorized, unless the question changes it to something else. So make sure that you have your eyes and ears open. Plus minus 2ahx minus 2ahx plus ah squared plus k. Okay, you don't have to literally expand it every single time and show the working. You can just write down the expanded version straight away. 2x squared plus 6x minus 7. Okay, now we start the comparison. So let's start with the coefficient of x squared, which is a, that's equal to 2. Then let's talk about the coefficient of x, which is minus 2ah on the right hand side and 6 on the left. Notice that we already have the value of a. So using this, we can find out the value of h. Minus 4h equals to 6, which means h is equals to minus 3 upon 2. Okay, then let's find out the value of k. So the constant on the right hand side is ah squared, the constant on the left hand side is minus 7. So ah squared plus k equals to minus 7, which means 2. Okay, here be a little careful, we're dealing with fractions. Minus 3 upon 2 squared plus k equals to minus 7. So 2 into 9 upon 4 plus k equals to minus 7. I'll just write down the final answer to save some time. So the final answer is k is equals to minus 7 minus 2 ones or 2 twos or minus 11.5. Okay, k is equals to minus 11.5. Now we can write it in completed square form. So y is equals to 2x minus minus, which will eventually become plus 3 upon 2 the whole thing square minus 11.5. Now using this, what will be the coordinates of the turning point? The coordinates of the turning point will be minus 3 upon 2, comma, minus 11.5. And there you go. That's the answer. Okay, so patience is key. If you guys want, I can do this using the second method also. If not, then let's just move on and find out. And let's see what's the third thing that we want, which are the intercepts, which are fairly easy. Or, in fact, while we're at it, let's do some past paper questions also. So this is a past paper question. It says express 2x squared minus 8x minus 10 in the form of a, x plus b, the whole thing squared plus c. So don't just always have your eyes closed and use a, x minus h, the whole thing squared plus k. Sometimes you have to see what the format is that's given in the question and equate it to that. So the coordinates part, the turning point coordinates, remember you're comparing it with a, x minus h, the whole thing square plus k. So if minus h is equals to 3 upon 2, That means h is equals to minus 3 upon 2. And if k equals to minus 11.5, you straight away have the value of k. Okay, so let's solve this. Let's solve this. See what do we have. So we have 2x squared plus 8x minus 10, which is identical to ax plus b, the whole thing square plus c. So if I expand, this will become x squared, this will become 2bx. Notice that I always write the variable in the end, which makes it easy for us when we're doing comparison. So then this becomes ax squared plus 2abx plus ab squared plus c. And on the left hand side, things are pretty obvious. It's 2x squared minus 8x minus 10. Now we start with the coefficient of x squared, which is a. So straight away we have the value of a, which is 2. If you had a value with x in the bracket, then how are you supposed to find the turning point? You won't. That's the whole thing, because you're comparing it in such a way that you won't ever have the value of x with something. Okay, and even if you do, let's say you do, then the simple trick is that whatever is inside the bracket, imagine that it's equal to 0 and then solve for x. Okay, so whatever expression you have inside the bracket, set it equal to 0, solve for x, that's your x coordinate of the turning point. Then let's talk about the coefficient of x, which is 2ab, which is equal to 8. We already have the value of a. So b is equal to 8 divided by 4, which is equal to 2. Okay, see, it's not just getting the right answer. It's also about how you feel about the working that you're doing. If you're not too confident by doing it a certain way, but you are confident by doing it maybe through some other way, then it's best that you stick to that. Okay. 8 plus c equals to minus 10, and then we have the value of c, which is equal to minus 18. Because if, let's say, you've solved question number 1 and you don't feel too confident, that's how you're going to, with that state of mind, you're going to solve question number 2. So you have to keep your confidence in check also. If you're not feeling confident by solving a question a certain way, then there is no obligation that you have to use that method. Okay. So this is what it turns into. It's 2x plus 2, the whole thing square minus 18. That's it. That's the answer to part 1. Then comes part 2, which is for the curve y equals to 2x squared minus 8x minus 10, same as above. State the least value of y and the corresponding value of x. So notice these 2 points, these 2 coordinates, minus 2 and minus 18, are actually what? Are actually representing the coordinates of the turning point of a minimum curve. Okay, this is what they're representing. Not drawn to scale. Okay, not drawn to scale. So it's just a random curve. Now, you don't have to make the sketch here, by the way. I'm making a sketch to explain a certain concept. So here, the x coordinate of the turning point, as you can see, is minus 2. The y coordinate of the turning point, as you can see, is minus 18. Now, why do we call it a minimum curve? We call it a minimum curve because it has a minimum y value. So what's the least value of y? The least value of y is minus 18. So the least value of y is minus 18. And what is the corresponding value of x when it's least? That is x equals to 2. There you go. Sorry, x equals to minus 2. X equals to minus 2. Okay. Sir, why? Okay, good question. Why is it not x minus 2? See, that's the thing. That's the reason why I prefer this method. What are we comparing it with? Kisne pucha ye? Afia. Afia, what are we comparing it with? We're comparing it with ax plus b, the whole thing square. We're not comparing it with ax minus h, the whole thing square. So if it's x plus b and b itself is 2, so that means positive remains positive. Okay, when we're comparing it with ax minus h, and then if h turns out to be positive, it turns negative. But since we're comparing it with positive only, therefore it remains positive. Sir, trig में angle identities when? किसकी बात कर रहे हैं हम? AdMaths, AS? Okay, let's do another question. क्या ख्याल है? Let's do one more question before we move on. We're still on the first concept. Okay, how about you guys solve this? And just so you know, in case there's someone here who hasn't done differentiation, stationary point means turning point. Okay? Because like I said, I will be assuming that you guys don't know anything about differentiation. So there you go. एंगल आइडेंटिटीज़ नहीं मिली, ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? आई रिमेंबर मैंने लास्ट क्लास एंगल आइडेंटिटीज़ की ही ली थी. खैर नहीं मिली तो नहीं मिली, कोई बात नहीं. मैं इंशाल्लाह उस पर कर लूँगा स्ट्रीम. Okay, let me know when you guys have the answer, please. Sir, not taking art math in O level is the worst decision of mine. Well, if you plan on taking math in AS level, if you're on the fence about it, okay, then it's fine. But if you have planned, I mean, if you knew that you were going to take math in A levels, then you should have taken add maths in O levels. The thing about any form of math is you can never go wrong with it. It's only going to help you if you're able to do well in it, but it's never going to harm you. The only time it will harm you is when you spend a lot of time and you don't end up getting a good grade. That is when it can be a problem. Acha, who's that? Abula. Is that your real name? So that's not the correct answer, although you're close. It's 16 minus x plus 4 the whole thing square. That's what the correct answer is. It's 16 minus x plus 4 the whole thing square. And is it possible for me to join your I don't have an academy, I teach online right now. If that's what you want to join, you can, but we are only left with differentiation integration. However, you can purchase all the recordings of the classes that I have conducted so far. Okay, so that's the answer to the first part. Now for part 2. Before you answer part 2, I would suggest that you write it nicely so that it's easy for you to compare it with ax minus h the whole thing square plus k, the completed square form. So if I compare it with ax minus h the whole thing square plus k, so the x coordinate of the turning point is minus 4 and the y coordinate of the turning point is positive 16. Acha, what was your question? Further math? नहीं बेटा, further math मुझे खुद आती होती तो मैं पढ़ाता ना आपको. मुझे खुद ही नहीं आती further math. So I can't teach you further math. Sir, the 2 is square. The 2 is square? What do you mean the 2 is square? Okay, I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly, but here's the correct answer. Achha, okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. Here's the correct answer. Minus 4, 16 are the coordinates of the turning point. Okay, any questions? If yes, do let me know. Achha, एक second, sorry. Just a minute. B is minus 4. Sorry, it's minus 4. I think earlier I said that it's wrong. Somebody said minus 4. I said that it's wrong. I'm really sorry. It's minus 4 and 16, which is why the x coordinate of the turning point is 4, 16. Okay, my apologies. मैंने किसको बोला था गलत है? खैर, मैंने किसी को बोला था गलत है. My apologies. Okay. Yeah, in turning point, we changed the sign of x coordinate only. Okay, now the third and the final thing, notice that we were still on the turning point. The third and the final thing that you want are the intercepts, which is very easy. Okay, if you want the x-intercept, what do? You plug in y equals to 0 and solve. Okay, and then if you want y-intercept, what do? You plug in x equals to 0 and solve. Okay, except for weekends, I'm aiming 3 days a week. Okay, I'm aiming 3 days a week. So that's how you find x-intercept. Simple as that. Okay, least value wala concept. Least value is the turning point. Okay, least value will be the turning point, the y coordinate of the turning point of a minimum curve, and the maximum value or the greatest value will be the y coordinate of the turning point of a maximum curve. Okay, simple as that. So this is how you find intercepts. I don't think we need to go over intercepts. Let's just quickly do one example. Let's say we have y equals to x square minus 6x plus 8. Okay, iska agar mujhe y intercept chahiye, so that's a no-brainer. The y-intercept, for y-intercept, what do I have to do? I have to plug in x equals to 0. So y is equals to 0 square minus 6 into 0 plus 8. So the y-intercept is 8. Okay, if you want to write it in point form, that's going to be 0, 8. If you want the x-intercept, for that you have to plug in y equals to 0, which means x square minus 6x plus 8 equals to 0. And then you can solve. Okay, how can you solve this, by the way? There are multiple methods. You can solve this by factorizing. Okay, and then you can also solve this. You can actually solve this by completing square also. Okay, you can actually solve a quadratic equation, any quadratic equation, by completing square also. And then there is the third and the safest, which is the quadratic formula. So this is how you can find out the x-intercepts. Okay. So that's how you basically sketch a quadratic curve. Now the next concept is discriminant applied to a curve. But before I do that, before I do discriminant applied to a curve, I think we should do quadratic inequalities. Okay. So the next concept is quadratic inequalities. Now, while I'm solving this, I'm assuming that you guys know middle term breaking. Okay, A levels में सब आ गए हैं. अगर quadratic equation solve करनी नहीं आती तो ये काफ़ी परेशानी की बात है. So I'm assuming that you guys know quadratic, how to solve quadratic equations. Sir, do you have a dedicated S1 playlist on your channel where we can prepare for it? I don't have all of S1, but inshallah towards the end, I do plan on completing S1 on my channel as well. Okay, not right now, but inshallah towards the end, I do plan on doing it. So let's say that we are to solve x square minus 8x plus 12 is greater than 0. Okay, what do we want? We want x square minus 8x plus 12 is greater than 0. अब इसका मतलब क्या है? What does greater than 0 mean? Now remember, in a quadratic curve, there are 3 distinct values of x. Okay, there are 3 types of values of x. So there are values of x where y is equal to 0. Okay, वो कौन सी values हैं? वो ये वाली values हैं, your x-intercepts. These are values where y is equal to 0. Okay, so if this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis, let's call this x1, let's call this x2. So when is y equal to 0? Y is equal to 0 when x equals to x1 or x equals to x2. Okay, when x is equal to these two values, because these two values lie on the x-axis, that means y is equal to 0. Yes, this stream is helpful for AdMath student as well. In fact, if I were to stream this topic for AdMaths, it would be exactly the same. Now, if you want the range of x, okay, now you will get a range because you're solving for a range, so your answer will also be a range. If you want the range of x where y is greater than 0, okay, ab greater than 0 ka matlab positive, above the x-axis. So that's this range right here. Okay, I'm going to color code it. Now, how do we write down this range? What exactly is this range? So notice, for this part of the curve, all the x values on this part of the curve will be less than x1. Why? Because it's on the left-hand side. Okay, I repeat, since it's before x1, that means all the x values will be less than x1. So x must be less than x1, okay, comma. And then what about this part of the curve where y is greater than 0? For this part of the curve, you can see x is greater than x2 because it's on the right side. So another solution would be x is greater than x2. Okay, if you don't fully get this, then nothing to worry about. When we do example questions, this will, with actual values, this will make a whole lot of sense. Now, when we talk about y is less than 0, so when is this curve less than 0? Let's highlight that part. That's right here. So this part is less than 0. Okay, and I'll write it down here also. This means that it's above x-axis. Okay, this means that it's the part where the curve is below the x-axis. So this part of the curve is falling in in between which two values of x. It's falling in between two values of x, x1 and x2. Okay, so what do we say? We say x is greater than x1. Why? Because notice that this part of the curve is greater than x1 and less than x2. So greater than x1 and less than x2. Okay, so this is how we solve a quadratic inequality. Okay, so when it's y equals to 0, that means on the x-axis, so you want the x-intercepts. When it's above x-axis, it's greater than a certain value, lesser than a certain value. When it's below x-axis, this is how you do it. Okay, अब रट्टे नहीं लगाना है इसके. I would suggest that you make a quadratic curve every single time and then solve. Okay, I'll solve an example question. You will see how it works. So x squared minus 8x plus 12. First things first, we'll do middle term breaking. X squared minus 6x minus 2x plus 12 is greater than 0. We make pairs and take common. In the first pair, we can take x common, so that's x minus 6. Then we can take minus 2 common, so that's x minus 6 once again. So x minus 2, x minus 6. Now for a minute, assume that you're solving a quadratic equation. Okay, for a minute, assume that you're solving a quadratic equation. So what would be your x-intercepts? Your x-intercepts would be 2 and 6. Okay, so your x-intercepts are 2 and 6. Now make a quadratic curve. Okay, make a quadratic curve just taking the x-intercepts into account. Okay, just take the x-intercepts into account. ज़्यादा आपने मेहनत करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है because इतना time नहीं होगा. आपने सिर्फ x-intercepts सही mark करने हैं, that's it. Make a very rough quadratic curve. Okay. Now, what part of the curve do you want? Who decides that? The inequality sign decides that. As per the inequality sign, we want the part of the curve which is above the x-axis. Since it's greater than 0, that means we want the part which is above the x-axis. Now, let's highlight the part of the curve which is above the x-axis. So that's this part and this part. Then finally, let's write down the range for both of these parts. Starting with the first part. So you can see that for as long as the curve is above the x-axis on the left hand side, x is less than 2. Okay, हमें 2 के पीछे पीछे रहना है. 2 के पीछे पीछे रहने का मतलब है that x will be less than 2. Or the curve is also above the x-axis after 6. So if it's above the x-axis after 6, that means x is greater than 6. That's it. This is how you solve quadratic inequalities. They're not at all complicated. In fact, they're very easy. Just practice a few, make sure that you get the basic concept right, and that's it. That's all you need. Okay, let's do another example for less than, and then we'll do some past paper questions. So let's say that you have the following. You have, let me take a x squared plus x minus 6 is less than 0. Okay, so forget that you're solving a quadratic inequality for a minute and solve it as if you're solving a quadratic equation. Okay, step 1, solve for x as if you're solving a quadratic equation. So x squared plus 3x minus 2x minus 6 is less than 0. So we have x into x plus 3. Then we take minus 2 common. So that's x plus 3 less than 0. X minus 2 into x plus 3 less than 0. Like I said, forget that you are solving a quadratic inequality. Solve it as if you're solving a quadratic equation. So the two values of x that you get are 2 and minus 3. Then quickly make a rough sketch. Okay, a very rough sketch. Here is minus 3. Here is 2. There you go. Now, what part of the curve do you want? You want the part of the curve which is below the x-axis. Why do I say that? Because of the inequality sign. This is below the x-axis. That means we want to have this part of the curve. Okay. Now, under what range of x does this part of the curve fall? This falls in between minus 3 and 2. That means you need to stay on the right side of 3 and you need to stay on the left side of 2. Right side of minus 3, sorry. That means greater than minus 3. Left side of 2 means less than 2. That's it. Okay, that is literally it. There's nothing else to it. Let's do one more example, however, because I want to cover an important concept. Let's say you have 4 minus 7x minus 2x squared, which is less than 0. Okay, 4 minus 7x minus 2x squared, which is less than 0. Okay, for that, read if the question has equal to sign, then you also put equal to sign. If the question has no equal to sign, then you don't put equal to sign. Simple as that. For example, if let's say ये था lesser than or equal to, तो हम भी हर जगह lesser than or equal to sign लगाते हैं. Simple as that. Okay, now when we're solving this, an important note that I want you guys to remember is that whenever both sides, so first of all, let's write this nicely. Okay, first of all, let's write this nicely. So we have minus 2x squared minus 7x plus 4 less than 0. Now, it's not a good idea to solve while the coefficient of x squared is negative. Okay, so हम क्या करेंगे? We're going to make the coefficient of x squared positive. How? By multiplying both sides by minus. Okay, so we're going to make the coefficient of x squared positive by multiplying both sides by minus. So we multiply this by minus 1 and we multiply the right hand side also by minus 1. Okay, we're multiplying it by minus 1. So the left hand side becomes 2x squared plus 7x minus 4, nothing new. The right hand side remains 0 because whatever you multiply 0 with, it makes no difference. However, the inequality sign flips. Okay, that's the important note. So the note is, I'll write it down. I'll type it actually to make it easy. So here's an important note, and that is that whenever both sides of the inequality are -1 are multiplied by -1, the sign there you go. Okay, whenever both sides of the inequality are multiplied by -1, the inequality sign flips. Okay, now we're going to solve it. Okay, we're going to solve it like we would solve any other quadratic equation. So let's do that. We have 2x squared. Let's break the middle term. It's going to be 8 and -1. Be open to the idea of doing some trial and error. Let's take 2x common, so we have x plus 4. Let's take -1 common, so we have x plus 4, once again, greater than 0. So it's 2x minus 1 into x plus 4 greater than 0. So x, the two values of x that we have are 1 upon 2 and -4. Quickly make a quadratic curve. Okay, here it is, 1 upon 2 and -4. That means this will probably be 1 upon 2. Somewhere over here we'll have the y-axis. This is -4. Now what part do you want? So because it's greater than 0, that means you want the part that is above the x-axis. So let's write down the range for that. So we must stay behind -4. That means x must be less than -4. And we must stay ahead of half. So that means x must be greater than 1 upon 2. And that's it, fellas. That's your answer. Simple. No, I don't teach in any schools anymore. I just teach online. Okay, so let's do some past paper questions. I will give you guys some questions to solve. Do you personally know Sir Ahmed Bilal? I met him, yes. I met him in Lahore. When Sir Zain invited us for his 100K celebration. So I met Sir Ahmed Bilal in Lahore. उनका चैनल है ना Math Prep के नाम से, if I'm not wrong. I live in Karachi. Okay, so ये solve करें. F of x is greater than 4. That means x square minus 3x is greater than 4, which means that you have to shift all the terms over to the left hand side. So x square minus 3x minus 4 is greater than 0. Now solve this. Is add math a bit harder than P1 math? No. Even though the syllabus is a bit harder, but P1 is harder because उसके questions मुश्किल होते हैं. I mean, syllabus is not a bit harder, syllabus is a bit longer, but P1 is still harder because, like, if you compare APGP questions of add maths with APGP questions of P1, you'll notice P1 ke questions are far more difficult, even though concepts are exactly the same. Same formula, same everything, but the questions are more difficult. Same goes for circular measure. Same goes for trigonometry. Yeah. Sir, is AS and A2 level maths same as add maths? No, A2 maths is like only I would say 10% of it is the same as add maths. Two topics, polynomials and logs, and linear law. That's it. That's hardly 10%, 10-15%. Baki 85% is completely alien to add maths. Okay, so the answer is x is greater than 4 and x is less than -1. Okay, good job, fellas. I can see most of you have gotten the correct answer. Taskin, you might want to recheck your answer. Okay. X. Please make sure if you're making a quadratic curve, then I can guarantee that you won't get it wrong. If you're not making a quadratic curve, then I will guarantee that you will get it wrong. Okay. Now, next is the next concept is that we're going to do is roots of a quadratic curve. Okay. Roots of a quadratic curve. So this is basically discriminant applied to a curve. Okay, that's what it is. This is discriminant applied to a curve. Any type of crash course exams in 2026. I do give tuition. I teach online entirely. You'll find all the details on the website, which you will find in the link in description. But for 2026, not right now. For 2026, I would suggest you reach out in July of 2025. Okay. Now, what do we mean by roots? Roots का मतलब होता है x-intercepts. Okay, so the roots are x-intercepts. Now, a very important concept that you guys need to know is nature of roots. Okay, nature of roots. Nature of roots is basically how the curve can interact with the x-axis. Simple as that. Okay, or in how many ways, or what are the different kinds of relationships that a quadratic curve can have with the x-axis. Okay. Normally, the way that we draw it, we always show two x-intercepts, but that's not true. You should also add your website link on your YouTube page, like when user clicks on your channel. I think I've already added my website link in the description. Let me check. नहीं add किया मैंने? I think I have. Yeah, my website link is added. Khair. So, as I was saying, discriminant. What do we mean by discriminant? Nature of roots. Discriminant abhi aayega. Let's talk about nature of roots. So nature of roots, there are three types. Okay, there are three different ways that a quadratic curve can interact with the x-axis. One is the obvious, that it cuts the x-axis at 2 points. Okay, so this is real and distinct. Okay, I was gonna write real and distance. Real and distinct. So if a quadratic curve has real and distinct roots, that means the discriminant b square minus 4ac is greater than 0. Okay. If not the description, then where, Basil? I'm not sure I understand. The other is that the curve is tangent to the x-axis. Okay. Is tangent to the x-axis. So here's the x-axis, here is y. Now how do we describe this? We say real and equal. We say real and equal. Okay, or we say tangent to the x-axis. And by the way, real and distinct को हम ये भी बोल सकते हैं that the curve cuts the x-axis at 2 points. Sir, why will you add your notes on your website? Why? You probably mean to say when. Soon. अब next जो update आएगा website में तब हो जाएगा. Sir, if you would be in coaching market in Karachi, I'm done with that. I'm done with teaching physically, although I do miss it. There's nothing wrong with it. But I can cater to more students online, which is why I teach online. Yeah, you can use these notes for AdMaths. That's perfectly all right. Like I said, if I were streaming this for AdMaths, the only difference that you would have seen are the example questions. I would have taken example questions from AdMaths past papers instead of AS Math. That's the only difference. Okay, now it's also possible that a curve may not touch or cut the x-axis at all. Okay, so here we say no real roots. No real roots. Or we can say that if there are roots, they are imaginary roots. Okay, agar roots hain, to imaginary hai. In which case b square minus 4ac is less than 0. Sir, if you're teaching in any school, no, I'm not teaching in any school these days. For the past 2 years, in fact, I haven't been teaching in any school by choice. Okay. So, अच्छा, what's b square minus 4ac, by the way? This is the discriminant. Okay, जो b square minus 4ac मैं लिख रहा हूँ, ये basically क्या है? ये discriminant है. और इसका purpose क्या होता है? इसका purpose होता है to discriminate, not the racism discriminate, but to help us distinguish between the nature of roots. Okay, and where does this come from? This is basically part of the quadratic formula. Minus b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So this part, okay, this part is basically called the discriminant. And what is its purpose? The purpose of quadratic formula is to solve the quadratic equation for x values. Discriminant ka purpose kya hai? It's a tool that helps us. It's a tool that helps us discriminate, which basically means distinguish, discriminate in between the nature of roots. Sir, how do we do sketching curves? We have just done that. Abhi humne dekha na sketching curves kaise karte hain. Okay, how do we do... No, wait. Do we use b square minus 4ac only when there are two unknowns? Okay, we'll get to that. Abhi uski tension na hai. Why are you not teaching? Okay, I think I've already answered. Okay, someone's already answered that on my behalf. And yes, that is true. Acha. Sir, is tracing paper allowed in CIE? Yes, it is. Sir, is there a lot of difference in your AdMath notes of good notes and of PDF expert in terms of quality? No, not a lot of. In terms of content, maybe minor difference. In terms of quality, I don't think there's a huge difference. It's just that GoodNotes has more features. It's easy to make a curve, straight line, and all that. Khair, anyway, now there is a fourth possibility also. Okay, you can see that there are three cases. So here's case number one, here's case number two, here's case number three. There is a fourth possibility also, and that is if the question just says that the curve has real roots. Okay, which means that it could be real and distinct, which means it could be real and equal. So in that case, what we do is we say b square minus 4ac is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so this is a mixture of 2 and 3. Sorry, not 2 and 3, 1 and 2. Okay. Yes, I will upload content for P3, inshallah, starting from January. Okay. Now let's do some past paper questions. I've taken out some questions which we are going to solve today. Show that the whole curve lies above the x-axis. So if you have a curve, a minimum curve, and it lies above the x-axis, what does that mean? Show that... In fact, let's take it on a fresh page, I guess. The equation of a curve y equals to x squared minus 3x plus 4 show that whole of the curve lies above the x-axis. So this is an example. Now, if a curve lies above the x-axis, that means it is not touching, let alone cutting the y-axis. It's a minimum curve which lies above the x-axis. Now, if it lies above the x-axis, that means the discriminant must be less than 0. That means the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, must be less than 0. Okay, so x squared minus 3x plus 4, let's apply the discriminant here. Now, how do we find out the value of a, b, and c? We're comparing it with the general form. Okay, so a equals 1, b equals minus 3, and c equals 4. So b squared minus 4ac must be less than 0. Let's see if that's actually the case or not. So minus 3 squared minus 4 into 1 into 4. So that's positive 9 minus 16, which is equal to minus 7. So minus 7 is less than 0. Okay, which means that b squared minus 4ac is less than 0. Therefore, no real roots. Okay, no real roots, which means that curve lies above the x-axis. Okay, this is how we were supposed to show. It's a 3-mark question. Make sure that you're specific and to the point. Okay, so let's do some more questions related to discriminant applied to a curve. Although AS mein wo kam hai, where you apply discriminant only to a curve, it's usually curve and a straight line. Okay, it's usually curve and a straight line. अच्छा, अब क्योंकि टाइम थोड़ा शॉर्ट है तो मैं कर्व और स्ट्रेट लाइन के नोट्स लिखने के बजाय what I'll do is I'll just copy paste the notes. Just a second, and I'll walk you guys through the notes. Okay. Just a second. Here. So, this is discriminant applied to a curve and a straight line. I'll walk you through this. Add math stream, next topic. I think EPGP. Maybe I'll run a poll on my Instagram. You guys can let me know there. Okay. Now, the same concept is extended and applied to a curve and a straight line. Okay. So, a curve can cut the x-axis at 2 points, 1 point, and it can also cut the x-axis. I mean, it can also be entirely above the x-axis. Same goes for a straight line. A straight line can cut the curve at 2 points, in which case b squared minus 4ac will be greater than 0, and we will say that the line and curve intersect at 2 points, or we can also say 2 solutions. A line could be such that it's tangent to the curve, okay, in which case the discriminant will be equal to 0, and we say line is tangent to the x-axis, and the number of solutions is 1. Then the third, b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, which means that the line and curve do not intersect. And there is a fourth possibility where the question doesn't specify, it just tells you that the line meets the curve. So what we have to do is we have to merge the first 2 cases, and we say that it's greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so I'll solve an example question to explain the concept here. So here's a question which says determine the set of values of the constant k for which the line y equals to 4x plus k does not intersect the curve y equals to x squared. Okay. So first of all, notice that it's asking us to find out the set of values, which means that we will get a certain range. Okay, the line, this is the equation of the line, does not intersect. Okay, does not intersect ka matlab b square minus 4ac must be less than 0. Okay, and we have the equation of the curve. Okay, now before I find out b square minus 4ac, this is a 3-step process. Okay, before we get to b square minus 4ac, there are 2 steps that we have to do. Step number 1 is that we equate or substitute. So we have 2 equations, we need to turn it into 1 equation, which we can by equating them or substituting one into the other. Okay, so y equals to x square, and we have y is equals to 4x plus k. So if I equate them or substitute them, this is what I get. X square equals to 4x plus k. Then comes the second step. The second step is that you need to always, before you plug in the discriminant, you always need to bring it in the form. Bring it in the form. Which form? This form. Ax square plus bx plus c. Okay, so we bring everything to the left hand side. X square minus 4x minus k equals to 0. And then the third and the final step, where we apply the discriminant. And what are we going to do to the discriminant? The discriminant will be b square minus 4ac is less than 0. Okay, so that means x square minus 4x minus k is less than 0. So a किसके बराबर है? a 1 के बराबर है. b किसके बराबर है? b is minus 4. Okay, just a second. Let me write this again. X square minus 4x. Okay, so we're comparing it with ax square plus bx plus c. Okay, so a is 1, b is minus 4, and c is minus k. So that means b square, which means minus 4 squared, minus 4 into 1 into minus k is less than 0. So that's 16 plus 4k is less than 0, which means 4k is less than minus 16, which means k is less than minus 4. Now we're lucky that we did not end up with a quadratic inequality. Normally in questions like these, towards the end, you end up with a quadratic inequality. In fact, I'm about to solve a question where we will have a quadratic inequality. ठीक है, फिर हम एक काम करेंगे. फिर we will stop, and then we'll only be left with one concept, which is the concept of disguised quadratics. Okay, so let me do one more question. Is A in O-level maths bad? No, that's not bad at all. At any stage of life, whether it's O-levels, A-levels, is not bad at all. Okay, so can I buy your ad math? There's no need to buy them. You will find them on the website inshallah very soon. Okay, you'll find them on the website inshallah very soon. You don't need to buy them. Okay. Find the set of values of k for which the line y equals to kx minus 4 intersects the curve y equals to x square minus 2x at 2 distinct points. So once again, set of values का मतलब याद रखो. Set of values होता है या तो multiple values or a range of values. It's usually a range. The line intersects the curve. Okay, and intersects the curve where? At 2 distinct points. Okay, so by describing the intersection, we decide what to do with the discriminant. So the discriminant will be greater than 0. Not greater than or equal to 0, just greater than 0. So first things first, we have the equation of a straight line, which is y equals to kx minus 4, and we have the equation of the curve, x square minus 2x. First, we will equate them, like I said, kx minus 4 equals to x square minus 2x. Let's move all the terms to the right hand side so that x square is positive. So x square minus 2x minus kx plus 4 equals to 0. Now we have x in 2 places. So let's take minus x common. Okay. Or even if you, let's say, take x common. Okay, if you take x common, so you'll have minus 2 minus k plus 4 equals to 0. Okay, which means a equals to 1. Remember, we're comparing it with ax square plus bx plus c. B equals to minus 2 minus k, and c equals to 4. Okay, so what are we doing with the discriminant? We're setting it greater than 0. That means b square minus 2 minus k, the whole thing square, minus 4 into 1 into 4 is greater than 0. Now, how do you expand minus 2 minus k? Remember this rule that minus a minus b the whole thing square is the same as a plus b the whole thing square. Why? Expand it and you'll figure it out. Expand minus a minus b the whole thing square. You'll notice that it's the same as a plus b the whole thing square. So I will instead expand 2 plus k the whole thing square minus 16 greater than 0. So we have 4 plus 4k plus k square minus 16 is greater than 0. If you're wondering that we can do this without expanding, you're right. We can do this without expanding, but I'm trying to explain an important concept here. That's why I'm expanding it. Now, if you solve this quadratic equation the way that we solve a quadratic equation, you'll have two values of k. One is 2 and the other is minus 6. Okay. Now, remember this is a quadratic inequality that we're solving. And the values of k, 2 and minus 6 means that the curve is cutting the x-axis at these 2 points, 2 and minus 6. Okay. Acha, ab kya kare? What part of the curve do we want? Go back to the inequality. It's greater than 0. That means this part and this part. So we have to stay on the left hand side of minus 6, which means x is less than minus 6. And we must stay on the right hand side of 2, which means x is greater than 2. Now the only difference is that when we are writing a final answer, we will not say x because the quadratic inequality is in terms of k. So instead we will say k, and this is the final answer. Can you explain the... Yeah, I can do that. So basically what's b? B is the coefficient of x, ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so before I can find out b, I need to find out the coefficient of x. Now, because we have x in multiple places here, that means I should first take x common. Whatever is inside the bracket, that will be the coefficient of x. Okay, why is that? That's because, like I said, remember that we have to compare it with ax square. We have to compare it with ax square plus bx plus c. So a is 1. Okay, a is 1. B is, this is b, right here, minus 2 minus k, it's the coefficient of x, and this is the constant. Okay, which is why we have to take x common, so we have all the terms that have x in them in one place. That's it. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. In the next class, inshallah, I'll do a part 2 of this also, probably coming week, where we will solve disguised quadratics and we'll practice more of these. It's not going to be a long stream, it's going to be a very short and specific stream. Acha, about the next topic, so I run polls on my Instagram. Okay, I usually do a Q&A on my Instagram where I ask you guys what I should stream, and that's how I decide what to stream. Okay, so a lot of people requested for quadratics, so here I am. So make sure that you guys are following on Instagram and you give your input whenever there is a story where I'm asking you guys what I should stream. So I'll stop here. Good luck to those of you who have their exams coming up. Make sure that you guys do well in these exams. You need that motivation. But if you don't, having said that, if you don't, it's not the end of the world. You still have a lot of time before your final exam, okay, before your CI exam. I didn't cut my hair. I went for Umrah. Acha, what is that, sir? When will you stream AdMath 0606 binomial? My pre-boards are coming up. AdMath binomial. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm not sure if I'll be streaming AdMath binomial or not. But I have a AS Math binomial playlist, which is as good as AdMaths. Okay, if not better. So if it's urgent, I would suggest you watch that. Okay, you watch that, and that will help you just as much. Okay, so I'll stop here. Before you guys go, if you haven't liked the stream yet, please do so, and if you haven't subscribed, please do that also. That would mean a lot. So I'll stop here. See you guys inshallah in the next class. Take care. Allah Hafiz.